In previous video, we talked about how we will do the auto test. So we need to using the assert function to check if the output is exactly what we want. So the next one I want to talk about is how should we test our array class. So in our array class, you will see here we have 4 member function. Right, since you have 4 member function, that means each member function you have to do the testing. So the first thing we see, how should we test the capacity function? So that's earlier we show you, right? So the capacity function, we are expecting the capacity is 100. So that's why here, when you have your capacity function, after we define an array A, so then you will see here, we can using the assert to check our capacity equal to 10. So for our example in the reading pages, we're using the capacity only for 10. But in your assignment 2, we want you to have your array class is int data type and the capacity is 100. So you need to make the accordingly change. So now let's see here, capacity function we finish. So how should we do the default constructor and setter function and getter function? So we do the constructor function first. So if you remember our constructor function, what do we do? The default constructor function actually only do one thing. They will assign each element is the default data value. So each element, the value is 0. So on the other hand, in your testing, you have to do here is when we do the constructor function testing, we need to make sure each element is equal to 0. So that's our constructor testing. Because what you want to test on your function, that's how you expect it they will do. In your implementation in the constructor function, we assign the default value for each element. So that's what we do. Good. So that's why here, now we finish constructor function and capacity function. So the next one, actually, we will skip the getter function first. Let's do the setter first. Because if you remember, on Monday we told you, the compiler, whenever they can do, because your getter function and the setter function, they are overloaded function. So which one they will be called first? Actually, the setter function will be called first. Unless the object you will associate, they have the constant keyword. So then we will call getter function. So let's see here, how should we do the setter function testing? Did you remember what your setter function do? So that's your setter function. Remember, setter function, when the index is out of bound, we will return dummy. So we will assign the value to the dummy. Otherwise, we will return the index location value. Right. So when we do our setter function testing, the first thing we need to think about, when I have the valid index, when I assign a value to that location, the value should be updated. Right. So that's why the first thing in the setter function, we need to be within the range index. When we assign a new value, this value should be safe. Then, so here you will see that's our setter function testing. Actually, the whole thing is the setter function testing we show you in the example. So you see here is operator setter function test. So the first thing we just using the 6 and the 7. Let's assign a value to the 6 and 7 because originally they are 0. So after I assign, if the setter function do correctly, so now when I try to get the value from A6, they should expect the value will assign here, right? Right, so that's why you see here, we do the assert function, we compare if the 6 index equal to the value we assigned earlier. The same thing for 7. So these two until here is we are according to the index is within the boundary. So that's the valid index. So they should assign correctly. However, setter function will also do what? If the index is invalid, we shouldn't let our program crash. So instead, when we have the index equal to -1000, when we try to assign a value, so this value 123, 123 actually will assign to the dummy earlier we defined in the class. So that's why here you see they should expect -1000 should be 123, 123. So actually we just combine everything. You see, if I give them the invalid index, actually they are all equal to dummy. Because remember, we say any invalid data, I just give them the dummy. So earlier dummy value has been assigned to 123, 123. So you see here, they equal to 123. So A10 is invalid index. They should be 123. But 6 is valid data. So they should equal to their own value. So actually these two lines actually kind of repeat from here. So if you want, you don't need to have these two lines. So that's invalid index, they will equal to dummy. But other than that, they shouldn't equal to dummy. Okay, because they are not assigned to the dummy value. So that's our setter function testing. So the only reason here we do the setter function testing is because the A here array we define is a regular object. So this regular object is not constant object. So that's why here when they call the operator function, all the operator function will call operator setter function. So when the operator getter function will be called. Okay, so that's what we see here. You just see, for example, here we have the A already. Okay, so then when we have the getter function we want to do the testing, actually this getter function only can be called when we have a constant object created. So now we create another constant object array we call B. So this B exactly equal to A. So what will happen here? Okay, so just say for example, here is my A. Here is my A. It's my A array. For example, they have the 5 elements, so I assign the value. So when I create another array B, actually they will make another copy because A is a static object. So when I have the B create, they will create another copy, exactly the same content as A. But one thing, be careful. My B actually is a constant reference. So that means this constant object, when we have a getter function, when we have the square bracket we need to associate, because this constant object only can invoke constant member function. Why? Because the constant object cannot be changed for their content. So the constant object cannot invoke any setter function because they cannot guarantee those data will be touched. On the other hand, actually those data cannot be touched. So any constant object only can invoke constant member function. So that's the only way we can test operator square bracket getter function. We need to create a constant object. So then after what you see here, you can have a for loop to compare A and B. Right? B copy from A, so of course each AI will equal to BI. But the different thing is, here the AI call square bracket setter function. But here the B actually calls square bracket getter function. So that's the constant object. So actually truly how we will test the getter function. So what we can do is we need to create a constant object. So the purpose for the constant object testing is to confirm that the public member function we intended to be getters they are in fact our getter function, which is all the getter function have the trailing const, because any constant object you declare, they only can invoke constant trailing const member function. So that's why here, after you have your constant object C created, so then right, I should be able to call capacity function. Then you can do equal to 10. Okay, so then you have the C to get 0. Also, since they are, we just compare, they should be the same. Okay, so then you will see here, each one, because the C is the constant object, they call the constant square bracket getter function. So that's all the testing we need for this assignment. In assignment 2, one thing is the complete test you need to do is you need to test all the public member function. So that's why you have your constructor function, capacity function, and the square bracket getter setter function. So when you want to do square bracket getter function, then we really need is the constant object. So the constant object is not only for the square bracket getter function, actually they are using to test all the getter function. So that's why you need to test square bracket getter and the capacity function. So those testing is including for your assignment 2 part 1.